In this video, I'm going to be doing a review of Bald and Bankrupt's latest, well, his first China video, which is entitled China, Utopia or Dystopia? I investigated. So here we go. Why is my opinion worth listening to on this topic? Well, I've been here in China for 11 years and have traveled to over 100 cities within this fascinating country. Why am I reviewing this video? Reviewing other travel vloggers' work is not something I typically do. Well, here's the reason. From my understanding, Bald and Bankrupt is one of the biggest travel vloggers out there. His videos have a great reach and quite a substantial influence. Being that he has arrived in China, a place that I know very well, I figured I needed to chime in and add my 2 cents because since this is admittedly Bald and Bankrupt's first time here, he may not realize what he's seeing or what he's hearing or experiencing all around him. Full disclosure, I am well aware of Bald and Bankrupt as a travel vlogger, but I have not, excluding a few minutes of one of his videos from some country in South America that I watched a pretty long time ago. Other than that, I haven't watched any of his work. Don't know really anything about him, his story, his viewpoints, etc. All I know about him is that he's from England, he likes to travel, and of course, he's bald. And I will add that while he is bald, he wears it well, and despite the baldness, he is still quite a good-looking chap. So in his video, he takes a train from Vietnam up to China, coming up to Kunming, which is the capital city of Yunnan province. Yunnan borders some Southeast Asian countries, kind of southwest China. I've been there, and I can tell you guys that Yunnan province has some of the most breathtaking scenery in all of China. Whether it be Tiger Leaping Gorge or Jade Dragon Mountain or any of the other dozens of amazing places there, Yunnan province is simply beautiful. It's also home to many of China's ethnic minority groups. He arrived in Kunming simply as a means to get to Chongqing city. Funny he went there first, and I'd be curious as to why. Chongqing is a city in China that has been pushed hard, especially over the past couple years, as a major travel destination. It's also coincidental because I was just recently there and released an entire series of videos about Chongqing and Chengdu. Of course, mine didn't get many views, but they show the place in depth and in a realistic light, propaganda free. His stated goal for the video is to show whether China is a futuristic utopia or a place where buildings are made of tofu bricks that are crumbling and where restaurants serve sewer water. He's referring to gutter oil here. In his video, I was surprised to see when he was stating the purpose of his video, he showed a clip of a well-known British YouTuber who works with Chinese state media and pumps out constant pro-China and anti-West propaganda. Well, I watched Bald and Bankrupt's first China video last night, and while I write this, I'm referring back to the video just to refresh my memory. And it appears that he has since blacked out the clip of the propagandist, which was around the 1 minute 20-second mark, which is really good to see. Curious to hear what happened there. I doubt that I ever will. Did he get wind that he was promoting a known propagandist and decided he wanted nothing to do with it? This propagandist was thrilled to be in a Bald and Bankrupt video, as you can see in his comment that he left on that very video right here. But that part of the video, showing a clip from the propagandist's channel, has been blacked out. Good move there, Baldy. Being affiliated with people like that would be a very quick way to destroy your credibility. Bald and Bankrupt was obviously very impressed by the trains and railway infrastructure in China, as he commented on it repeatedly. And I will agree, the high-speed rail network in China is fantastic and definitely a godsend for travelers like me and like Baldy. I use the trains weekly. He also took the chance to highlight how inferior his home country of England was in terms of railways and infrastructure as a whole. I'm not surprised that he was impressed by the railways, but he was kind of jumping to conclusions over them, even stating that if pretty much any country in the world, and he went on to mention the US by name, thinks they're catching up to China, they are mistaken. I was a little confused by this part of his video because it sounded like he was saying that no other countries will catch up to China overall, just in terms of overall infrastructure and development. And he was forming this opinion based on a good railway network? Or was he saying that we'll never catch up to them in terms of high-speed railway infrastructure? Now, that part would be a little easier to understand. I'm just kind of confused by his vast, sweeping statement, and I'd like to ask him what he was actually trying to say there. As I said, I love the fact that China has this vast network of high-speed railways. I was in China before they had those, so I have lived the change and I've experienced its impact firsthand. While the trains are wonderful and the stations are indeed very big and impressive, I'm usually curious when I see people overreact to them. The high-speed railways in Japan, which are just as nice, and dare I say, even nicer in some ways, have been running for decades. I'm guessing Bald and Bankrupt has never traveled through Japan and thus hasn't seen this kind of modern high-speed railway network before. Okay, fair enough. I guess I can see his amazement at the railways, but then again, there are about 100 of these, oh my goodness, the trains, wow, the trains, look at this, soft propaganda videos coming out of China, and Bald and Bankrupt was almost certainly aware of this before going there. So the fact that he spent so much time droning on and on about it, recycling the same old thing that's already out there, is truly puzzling to me. I honestly would not have expected that out of a guy like him. Whatever happened to just making good old travel videos without focusing on propaganda talking points? Also, in his video, he stated that Chongqing is the largest city in the world by population. This is actually not exactly true. Chongqing used to be a part of Sichuan province, but it was separated in 1997 and it became its own municipality. If you count the entire population of the municipality, then I think it would be the largest city in the world, but that would be kind of crazy to look at it that way. There's Chongqing City, and then there's Chongqing Municipality. Chongqing City itself, while having a huge population, is far from being the most populated city in the world. You can't take the whole municipality and compare its population to other cities. Most of Chongqing municipality is rural land, small towns and villages, which account for over 70% of its total population. So this stat about Chongqing being the most populated city in the world that gets thrown around all the time is very misleading. It's inaccurate, it's clickbait, and to some degree, it's even more of this softcore propaganda. Bald and Bankrupt's constant praise throughout the first half of the video of the infrastructure is such that even he realizes that it's probably a little bit over the top, and at one point he even says himself that he probably sounds like a spokesman for the Chinese government. Like I said, there's already so many of these type of videos out there of people just fawning over the trains. And I really expected that, a hardcore traveler like this guy wouldn't have taken the same approach. Genuinely, I'm surprised by that. Once he gets in the taxi and gets into Chongqing, he starts to get a taste of the quote-unquote real China. The taxi driver offers him a smoke. He comments on the hazy skies. He admits that he's feeling stressed, but loving it all at the same time. That's legit China travel. It's crazy, chaotic, interesting, and full of surprises. And he was also getting a taste of real Chinese hospitality. The people of China are generally super nice. You can see this highlighted even more when he went to get his ripped sweater stitched up by a local roadside seamstress. She appeared to be a middle-aged lady. He chatted her up, joking around, kind of flirting in a playful way. Unable to understand 99% of what she was saying, she was asking him if he was there for leisure or for business. The joking banter was pretty funny, I'm not going to lie. Well, she stitched up his sweater, and then when he went to pay, she didn't accept his payment. That's a perfect example of Chinese hospitality. She could tell that this guy was probably fresh off the boat. He was visiting China, and she wanted to show her kindness and hospitality by doing him a solid and stitching up his sweater for free. Now, that's something that happens from time to time in China. People do something nice for you and won't accept your payment. I mean, don't come here expecting it. But if you do come to China traveling around and you're nice to people, you will probably experience that. I've experienced that sort of kindness all over China. It's their best trait, and it's one of the things that never ceases to amaze me about the common people of China. He ended up with a hotel that was sort of tricky to find. It's the type where the reception desk and the main office is on some random floor of a high-rise building, making it hard to find. You can't just walk right up to the door because what you're looking at is a high-rise building. A lot of times there's not a visible sign from the outside, so you have to go into the building, look on this board full of different businesses and what floor they're on and where they're located within this gigantic building, and it can be a little tricky to find what you're looking for. Now, China does have plenty of hotels like that. He makes a statement in the video. He says that's how hotels in China are. Well, I just want to offer a minor correction. That's how some are. When I was in Chongqing, I did encounter a couple of hotels like that, and I have encountered them in other cities as well. But the majority of hotels I've stayed in China, and I've stayed in hundreds, by the way, are not like that. Many hotels do have ground level entrances. Now, this is a minor detail, however. I mean, no big deal. His video highlighted that you can get great rooms for a really unbelievable price. Keep in mind, the reason that the price seems low to us is because it's set for domestic travelers. And much of the Chinese population earns less than $1,000 per month, and in many cases, only around $500 to $700 a month US. Bald and Bankrupt's video seemed to conclude that China is much different than portrayed in the media, and he didn't come across any of these tofu bricks. I do need to communicate with you guys honestly here. First of all, gutter oil, which he called sewer water, it does exist in China. It's oil that is used and then discarded, but then scooped up out of the gutters, garbage cans, etc., to be refiltered and reused. By the time it's reprocessed, you would never know you are consuming gutter oil. It certainly does exist, as some videos come out from time to time, even recent videos exposing somebody collecting gutter oil. It's not something you're just going to look around and see somebody doing randomly, but it is something that's happening. Now, I honestly believe that it's getting less and less common, but there's no way to really know. So Bald and Bankrupt can try to be funny about it, he can be sarcastic about it, but it is a real thing that does actually exist. I mean, if you're seeing video clips of it online, and I'm talking about recent video clips as well, then it's obviously happening to some degree, right? I haven't seen anyone say anywhere that it's extremely common and found on every street corner in China. Just trying to add a little objectivity to the topic. As far as the tofu bricks that he was in search of, he came up empty-handed. He would walk up to a building and knock on it to see if it would fall apart. It seemed solid, so he appeared to conclude that all the talk about tofu dreg buildings in China was just a bunch of nonsense. Again, he's rushing to judgment on this one. So, here's the reality of the situation with the whole tofu dreg thing. Obviously, not all buildings are made from tofu dreg materials. In other words, materials that are of lower or compromised quality. It doesn't mean that the concrete won't still be hard to the touch. One of the things that always surprises me about China is how so many new buildings and construction projects in China age so quickly. Sometimes you'll see a building that is looking rough. I mean, cracks in the wall, cracked stairs, the sidewalks are all cracked up and broken. But maybe the place is only about 10 years old or even less. Of course, there are more extreme examples that you can find online, such as the clips he showed where stuff is literally just crumbling. I mean, that was actually filmed by a human being with a camera here in China, and there are hundreds of clips like that, so it is pretty clear that that type of situation, even to that extreme degree, does exist. Doesn't mean you're going to find it on every street corner. During the big construction boom of the past couple decades, buildings and even new districts seemed to pop up overnight. Within a lot of these projects, there was no shortage of corruption. For example, if a company could use cheaper materials or skimp out on something to save money, they could pocket the difference, thus enriching themselves. As a result, you'll see a lot of low-quality buildings all around China. You'll also see a lot of really, really nice buildings in China of very high quality. China is a mixed bag. Now, if he gets out there and really travels through China and spends a good deal of time here, and he shares with you guys, the audience, what he actually sees, well, then I think he will get a more well-rounded and realistic perspective. It's far too early in his trip to China to make any sweeping judgments like China is this or China is that. You just got here, bud, and you ain't seen nothing yet. I hope Bald and Bankrupt will make real travel videos about China and keep it authentic. To be honest, for a guy with a following and name as big as his, I was a little disappointed in the video. I'm new to this guy's content, I'm not subscribed, and actually the only reason I'm watching it is because he's here in China. I expected a bit more. This video was mostly just him freaking out over their railways, visiting a dwarf amusement park, and wandering around the city a bit with a side mission of seeming to want to show that Western media has got China all wrong. So he came here wanting to show if China is a utopia or a dystopia. Well, newsflash, guys. Who said it has to be one or the other? I mean, I've been here for a long time, and I have seen some things that are pretty damn dystopian, especially during COVID. But then I've also seen a lot of really nice modern cities, the application of some types of cutting-edge technology. So this whole idea that, people need to come check out China to see if it's a utopia or a dystopia. Why does it have to be one or the other? Maybe there are elements of both within China. I will say, for a guy who says he can't speak Chinese, he's learning the basics quite well. A quick learner, it seems. I know that on my first day in China, I wasn't speaking anywhere near that well. I'm curious to see how his trip plays out. With his name and reputation, I have high hopes that he will make real travel videos, and he is one guy that I would never expect to resort to shilling. With a name and following like his, there could be offers made to him. Hey, come highlight this, show this, reflect on this in a positive way. We'll compensate you with such and such amount. I'm not saying that will happen or that has happened. I'm saying there is a possibility that it could, hypothetically. But for me, I'm placing my trust in him that he's a guy that values his integrity and the trust of his viewers above all else. Naturally, he will have to use some discretion in what he films and what he talks about here in China. That's just the way it is. Until now, literally the only big-name travel vlogger that I've seen that made travel videos about China that were worth a damn were made by Sabbatical. He did some pretty good work. He was honest, he didn't shill or pander, he was fair, he pushed the edges a bit. He also used to live in China and he speaks Chinese pretty well and he knows what he's looking at and what he's doing. He's not walking around in a fog of culture shock, language barriers, and a lack of cultural understanding. I have yet to see another well-known travel vlogger do anything good as of late here on the ground in China. The vast majority that I see are just blatant propaganda and soft power pieces. As far as I'm concerned, it's just unwatchable crap. I'm not trying to hate, I'm just being painfully honest. And no, I am not saying that Bald and Bankrupt falls into that category. China is a cool and interesting country with a lot to see. It's just loaded with fascinating places. And for somebody with a following like his to just come here and do an infrastructure highlight video, well, what a disappointment that would be. Bald and Bankrupt, nothing but respect intended here, my friend. I wish you safe and interesting travels during your time in China. If you ever want to talk or run into issues, don't hesitate to reach out to me anytime. Like I said, I've been here a long time and I might be able to offer some useful insights or info. Well, those are my thoughts, guys. Kind of long-winded, but hey, that's just the way I roll. Let me know what you guys think. If you found this interesting, please consider subscribing. Thanks for tuning in and we'll catch you all in the next video. 下次再见.